Welcome to Mountains Made Low, where we help you encounter the love of God and live well in the modern world. I'm Dennis Mueller.
And I'm Christine Reagan.
And so,
we should just acknowledge it at the very beginning.
Yeah, tell everybody what's going on with your voice.
I was gardening an awful lot this past weekend. It was my husband's birthday, and that's his favorite thing to do, and it's quickly becoming my favorite thing to do. I also want to know what it is about being in your mid to late 30s where you just get into this gardening mode. I think about my plants way more than I thought I ever would. What is this that's happening to me that I think about how they're doing? I go out, I check them in the morning. I want to see what they're yielding, and I'm thinking about when we can harvest all the vegetables and everything. I was never like this before.
You're getting older.
And that's very true. So what is it about getting older that you just want things to grow?
Oh, that's I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
But
I haven't taken the time to ponder it.
There is something very spiritual about what that is.
I'm sure
we got to think about it.
Yeah.
But this is the best that it sounded, and I feel perfectly fine. The allergies have taken hold. This is what I'm going to sound like today.
Well, diminutive people have a tendency to have weak constitutions.
I don't have a weak constitution. I think that we should admire my strength.
But I got to tell you, I'm digging it. It's this whole Demi Moore thing. It's really, I like, it got that.
The problem is that when people would see me, they'd be wildly disappointed. God, Demi Moore, she's like, but we have something good to say today. I don't know how much of it I'm actually going to end up saying.
We'll get through it.
But today we're going to talk about something that touches every corner of modern life. And I think it's something that everybody wrestles with, which is, what does holiness look like in the digital age that we live in? So it's not in theory. This is in the actual messiness, the busyness, the buzzing, this always on world that we live in.
Yeah.
This digital world is not a neutral part of our lives. It's not just a tool that we use, and we can't say that it's just insignificant. It matters. It's an environment that forms all of us. We have phones, we have screens, we have feeds. They shape us. They form our attention spans and our desires and our habits. And they factor into our relationships.
Absolutely, yeah.
For better or for worse, they factor into our relationships. And if they don't shape you specifically, because I do know people who are fairly distant from technology, they still shape who we're in relationship to. Mm-hmm. Maybe they shape your children, your grandchildren, your friends. So we can't just say it's of no consequence to us.
Yeah, we're all connected in some way.
So in the same way that a monastery shapes us, or a job shapes us, the family dinner table shapes us, so does this digital age that we're currently in. And it's not going to stop. No. We're going to have a digital age, and I don't even know what the post-digital age looks like, because it's going to be digital. I don't know.
It's all
it's going to be
cyborgs
holographic.
and human slavery. That's what it's going to be.
Oh, my goodness. That's terrifying. So, and when you say things like that, I'm actually very intimidated by technology. I don't know that everybody is, but the good news is that God is not intimidated by the age that we live in. He's not deterred by it. He's not concerned how all of this is going to pan out in the end. And he knows, and we need to know, that holiness is not just possible in the digital age that we navigate daily. Holiness is deeply needed in the digital age. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
How's that for an intro?
No, that's a great intro.
I got to sip some tea.
I know.
Goodness.
You go refresh yourself. When we talk about the digital world that we live on, I think it's important to point out that there's really three pillars that the digital world is built upon. And these are going to be very familiar to us because it's what you would expect, right? Living in this digital age. It's what kind of keeps us engrossed with this. It's speed, it's stimulation, and it's self-curation. And so when we talk about speed, speed is not just fast internet or these 5K networks, all these companies competing to be the fastest out there. When we're talking about speed in the digital world, it's our need for instant gratification. When I'm sitting in traffic, it's too long. When I'm in line to pick up a prescription in the drive-through, it's too long. Yeah, we grow impatient with all this stuff because we're so used to getting everything that we want, from Amazon to information to movies, music, and more. We're so used to getting what we want, when we want, whenever we want, that we become impatient when we have to wait. And if you don't think that the speed of the digital age has shaped you and how you interact with the world and others around you, maybe even your relationships, then I would challenge you to think again, because it does have an impact. A lot of times we're not aware.
There's no way that we can live in the midst of all of this and say that we're impermeable to it.
Yeah.
We're not. We don't have to be negatively affected, but it impacts us nonetheless.
It does. There's an impact. And that impact can be positive and it can be negative. So the next one is that stimulation. And stimulation is really it's what designed to keep you hooked, to bait you into scrolling a bit longer and more frequently. I mean, think about it. Your ads are catered to your browsing and your shopping habits. Algorithms feed you more of what you like to see, listen to, and watch. There's a reason why we panic when we can't find our phone and why kids are anxious to come home so they can jump on their game consoles. This is what we call addiction. And the powers that be want you to continue to drink the Kool-Aid. I mean, think about the phone, right? There's that visual pleasure that we get from it. There's the touch, the sensory, because we're scrolling, we're holding things, we have to have something in our hands. There's that auditory appeal because we're listening to different things. You do any type of study, you look at any type of research, they're all pointing to the fact that, at least when it comes to the phones, that there's an addictive quality to them, right? And that's going to carry in. Addictions affects all of our relationships, whether we're aware of them or not. And so then there's that self-curation. And what that is, it's really the opportunity to present yourself to the world as you want to be seen, which may or may not be how you actually are. We often identify ourselves by the things that we like and the things that we subscribe to. And so what happens is we end up projecting a persona that may or may not be a reflection of who we really are. This self-filtration often results in us finding ourselves in an echo chamber of our own making, where reality becomes how we define it. And all of this, the speed, the stimulation, the self-curation, all of this makes achieving holiness a challenge for us.
And it makes it a challenge because each one of these pillars has spiritual consequences. Speed and that instant gratification leads us to struggle with prayer. It leads us to struggle with meditation. And then our incessant need for stimulation makes it difficult for us to be still and to sit in silence and to contemplate the most important goods in this world. And then self-curation makes it challenging for us to put the persona down and allow ourselves to be real and to be vulnerable. Something that we don't necessarily have a problem on this podcast.
Right.
I think the problem is that we've maybe been too real.
And we definitely keep each other real.
Yes. We struggle with being authentic because knowing who we are takes time.
Yeah.
And I think that is so, so important. You don't just...
We don't want to invest in anything
Well,
today.
you don't want to even invest in your own self. Why do I do what I do? Why do I browse?
Nobody thinks about
for
those
what I
big
browse
questions,
for?
right.
We need to think about who we are, but who we are takes time.
Yeah.
Why don't I just let the algorithm tell me who I am and what I need to buy and the things that I like?
Yeah.
All of this takes a lot of self-reflection, and self-reflection takes time. It's why people go to therapy, and they have a therapist ask them fairly simple questions, but even posing these simple questions from the outside to yourself, you're now thinking about things that you've never thought about before.
Yeah.
And therapy takes time. Talked about people who have been in therapy. They might be in there it's not going to happen in one session.
That's
People
right.
say, I've been in therapy for years. And you're like, God, what are you talking about for years? You're discovering things about yourself.
Yep.
And that takes time.
Yep.
So holiness requires time, and relationships require time, especially our relationship with God. So unless we're going to take steps to mitigate the influence of digital media on our lives, the pursuit of holiness becomes an uphill battle in the digital age because of how it's forming us, or rather how it's deforming us. It's breaking us down. So we not only have to be mindful of things, but we have to be intentional about our pursuit of holiness when using digital media or living in the midst of this digital culture.
And let's go a little deeper into the interior effects, of this stuff that we're exposing ourselves to. Because what does constant digital engagement actually do to the human heart? What it really does is it fractures and impedes our attention.
And our attention spans aren't doing great to begin with, by the way.
Yeah.
Think about all the things that have been eating at our attention spans for a long time.
There was a study, and I don't know how true it is because I haven't been able to verify it, but it was all over the internet for a while. And if it's all over the internet, then we automatically know that it's true. So I know that there was a study, and I think Microsoft was behind it, and regarding attention spans. And the human beings today, their attention span is under 8 seconds, which is shorter than a goldfish. Something along those lines. I think if anybody kind of Googles it and looks it up, they'll find it. Again, I don't know how accurate that was. I couldn't find anything on the statistics when I saw that years ago.
Well, that's a good point, because on YouTube, they have something called the 3-second Like it's like a 3-second views. How many 3-second views do you have? Because if you can get somebody to keep watching after 3 seconds, they're more likely to finish it out to the end or at least get to the middle. 3 seconds?
Wow.
That's why there's so much clickbait out there.
Yeah.
Because you can get somebody hooked in that amount of time.
Yeah.
But 3 seconds, I mean, is that all that we can manage?
That's all we can muster.
that-
The reason why this really needs to be on the forefront of our minds is because attention is the doorway to communion. I mean, think about the most significant relationship in your life. Think of all the attention you put into that relationship to sustain it, to nourish it, to enable it to grow. You know, if the enemy can scatter your attention, he can scatter not just your prayer life, but your relationships as well. And so if you stay up surfing the internet or watching movies or TV shows while your spouse goes off to bed, it's not only a matter of time before that will impact the health of your relationship. Even if you're watching it together with your spouse in your bed, it's replacing real conversation and time for you to be in communion with one another, spiritually, emotionally, physically, intellectually.
Well, people say you should keep, especially newly married couples, don't put a TV in your bedroom.
Yeah, I walk my dog at night, so walking through the neighborhood, I mean, you can see the TV glow in the second floor bedrooms all the time. If I'm walking the dog late at night, so many people have the TVs in their bedrooms, and it's detrimental to your relationship and everything, because the one thing that's not taking place in that bed is communication.
Right. It works against, and we're not even talking about sex. We're just talking about intimacy. It works against the intimacy, the conversation that you could be having.
Well, it's like that spice relationship, the spiritual intimacy, the physical intimacy, the intellectual intimacy, the emotional intimacy, So communication is diminished because of this. And that's not to say that you should never watch TV in bed, but making a habit of it will be detrimental to your relationship.
I'm glad you said that, because I do have a TV in our bedroom.
Why not?
But we do it because we have a very
you guys
small...
spend all your time planting, and that's you're probably in communion.
Sean and
with
I have
one
no
another.
shortage of together time. We're never not together. You're right. You have to manage it. You can't make bad habits.
Yeah.
And if I thought it was a strain on our relationship, I'd get it out.
Yeah.
But it also can be a very intimate time to be like, hey, let's watch a movie. Let's have a date night in our room.
Yeah.
Because we want to keep things quiet so that the kids can go to bed. So, I mean, of course, there's a time and a place for
But like
everything.
you said, there has to be a deliberateness behind it.
And that's why two spouses can keep each other in check about things too.
That you have a built-in accountability partner with your spouse.
Right. And you know what else we do? And this is actually a really cute thing. We do this on our main television, which is in our living room, and we do this in our bedroom. We'll put like a fire screensaver on. We don't have a real fireplace, but it has like a crackling sound. And we might just have a snack and a glass of wine, and we have the fire going, and we sit there and we talk and we reconnect and we share about our day. And it adds a little bit of ambiance. So it actually can kind of cater to the intimacy.
Yeah. Kind of leading into, I mean, there's opportunities to use digital age in this digital world to help us grow in holiness. But we have to be attentive. We have to be aware of what the issues are in order for us to recognize them and then course correct.
Yes.
Right? But there's other dark sides to all this stuff too.
And so the other dark side of all of this is that we don't compare ourselves to reality anymore. We compare ourselves to some curated illusion of reality where somebody else's life appears to be perfect or desirable, or even their appearance. Gosh, everybody that I see now has a filter on their own
Flawless
face.
skin.
And it's a little fuzzy, and nobody actually looks like that in person.
Yeah.
And there's makeup out there that's marketed as filter-worthy makeup, where it'll give you that kind of
glow or
smooth
sheen.
and glow. Yeah, that smoothing out, that glow. It's so you can look like all of those influencers that you see on Instagram and on Facebook. And that's not even an accurate representation of how they look. So you can look just as fake as they look. Yeah. That's a problem. That's a problem. And then we compare ourselves to things that are not even rooted in reality. So comparison like this is not only physically and mentally corrosive, but it's spiritually corrosive, because it shifts the question from, Lord, who are you calling me to be, to, Lord, why am I not like them?
Yeah.
And then we end up striving for this wrong kind of perfection, this false understanding, this false reality that exists out there. Our very identity rests with our Heavenly Father. But we tried to build our identity from feedback, from likes, from visibility online. And if everybody else has a filter, why wouldn't I have a filter too, right? So what does Jesus challenge us to do in the midst of all this? He tells us to be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect. So we have to ask ourselves, in whose image are we trying to fashion ourselves?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I would add to that it also erodes this interior sense of silence, interior silence.
How many people do you think have stopped listening because they can't bear to hear my voice? How many people?
I don't know, man. Like
30%?
I would be tuning in more often. But that's me. That would be me.
So what you're telling me is that my real voice is actually a tougher pill to swallow than what's happening right now.
It is so grating and annoying. I don't know how our
I don't
listeners
disagree. That's why I don't listen to my own voicemails back. Continue, sir.
One of the other aspects is silence, right? When we talk about silence, it's not the absence of noise. I think that's what people associate silence is just quietness, right? What we have to realize is when we talk about silence and we're coming at it from a religious perspective, it's really the presence of God. This is where we find and encounter God in the quiet, in the still moments of our life. And I remember, you want to talk about silence. I remember a time when Jude and I were serving Mass together. It was some type of event here at the parish, and I was serving as the MC, and he was the lead server. And during the consecration, he's supposed to ring the bells, and I'm looking at him from across the altar. Like, we're both kneeling on opposite sides of the steps, and I got a bird. I mean, all we have to do is we're looking at each other's faces as we're kneeling there. And I could see that he had checked out. Jude had left the building. There was this blank, empty stare. I don't know where he went, but I knew that he was no longer
Totally zoned out.
Totally, he was not present at all. His mind had gone somewhere else. And then he forgot to ring the bells during the consecration, and I think he missed two of the bells. And then he kind of checked in. He realized, and you can almost see him kind of jump. And then he looks at me and he cracks a smile, back to reality. And I remember smiling. We both smiled because we knew what had happened. And I asked him afterwards. I said, "What happened?" And I'm hoping that he may have had, this existential moment of prayer and contemplation where he just got lost in ecstasy.
He was having an apparition or something.
Right. Nope. He was thinking about a video. I can't even get this out. He was thinking about a video game and this section that he could not beat.
Yep.
That's where his mind went, right?
There.
And this is what's happening here in this again, it's a quiet moment in the consecration. I mean, yeah, words are being spoken, but there's a solemnness, a solitude that's kind of taking place here, and he just kind of zoned out. I mean, silence is always a struggle when we are used to constant stimulation. And for those of you listening, I mean, just try sitting in silence for 3 minutes just to see how your mind reacts. Can you still your mind for 3 minutes? That's where the enemy wants us. He wants us scattered-brained and distracted so we cannot focus on God or hear him in the silence. Silence is a discipline that needs to be practiced and it needs to be cultivated.
The message is that the digital age makes this
It robs
difficult.
us. Yeah, it robs us of that opportunity because we're constantly fed stimulation.
Another thing that the digital age trains us to do is react rather than reflect.
That's a big one.
And as the most reactive person that I know, you should really trust me on this.
It's that hot Italian blood.
Because you better believe it. Because the digital world rewards immediacy. And so we struggle with virtues like patience and temperance. Mm-hmm. And then discernment becomes a challenge too, which makes not only hearing the voice of God challenging, but also discerning his will for us challenging when faced with different choices and decisions that we have to make. Yeah. So what we end up doing is that we barrel into choice, just going with what feels right in the moment, saying our piece without thinking about what the consequences might be. You've done it to me.
Yeah, that's true. I have.
Without thinking about what the consequences might be of what we say and how it might be perceived or received. And I can't say that we're always responsible for that, but we do have control over what comes out of our mouths. Even like a cursory look at Facebook or Reddit or YouTube comments reveals a lot about people and how they react viscerally and how they're unable to actually listen to what the other one is saying. It reveals like the heart of the human person. Yeah. And it is dark. Yeah. It is very, very dark because if you are willing to put so much of this out anonymously in a digital space with no accountability, that's a frightening place to be. There's darkness there. Yeah. Having all of this said, the question then becomes, how do we live in this world without letting it shape our interior life? How do we keep the negative influence of the digital age at bay so that something else can take root, and how we can use it responsibly? Because God has a plan for everything. He has a plan for how we can use it to draw people to lead holy lives. Right? In the same way that other stages of life and generations and ages, revolutions that have
I
taken
agree.
place, God has a plan for our life as we advance.
Yeah. But I think the first thing that we have to do in order to answer that question is I think we have to define what holiness actually means here. Like when you talk about holiness, I think so many people think about it as being like some type of moral perfection. And it's not even perfection in and of itself. I mean, we want to kind of get away from this idea of perfection. In fact, when Jesus challenges us to be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect, that quote that you gave us from Matthew's Gospel, the Greek word for perfection actually means to be as one ought to be, right? And so how ought we to be? Well, we ought to be like God in whose image we're created, right? So holiness really amounts to us being holy as God is holy. Not to be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect, but to be as we were meant to be as we were created to be.
Do you
Right?
know what that Greek word is? I'm just curious.
It's
I'm not
teleos.
Teleos, okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that the Hebrew word is kadosh.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really, for those of you who are a little nerdy and you really want to get into this, just Google the word kadosh and see what comes up, because there's such great stuff to read out there in the digital space. Go find
Yeah.
out what the word kadosh really means in the Hebrew, and then make your way to the Greek.
That teleos, that really forms the root of modern words like telecommunications, teleprompters, telescope. What does a telescope do? What does a telephone do? It takes something that's distant and puts it within reach. And so I think
I love
holiness,
that.
I think when we talk about holiness, we think, oh, that's way beyond my reach. I can't possibly do that. Become a saint? What? You're crazy. But really to be holy as God is holy is something that's easily attainable, but we have to reorient our thought as to what holiness is. So holiness is it's just union with God. I mean, that union really enables us to become the kind of person who can love as God loves. So holiness isn't about rejecting technology or throwing our phones out the window on the highway, although I have been tempted to do that on numerous occasions. When we talk about holiness, we're talking about, at least from a Christian perspective, we are called to integrate technology into a life that is ordered toward God.
Because that's really the goal of life. I mean, I heard Father Mike say this not long ago. He said that some people will say, what's the purpose of life? Purpose of life is to find, some people say happiness, and you can even take that in a deeply Catholic and spiritual sense. That's very good. You can say it's to live a life that's full of meaning. That's wonderful. He said, but the real purpose of life, and I don't think it gets better than this, is union. That's the purpose of life. The purpose of life is union.
Union with God, union with others, right? So what do? Again, look at the two great commandments. We're called to love God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and we're called to love our neighbor as ourselves. Both of them involve union. It's unity. So first and foremost, we need to reclaim our attention. So consider this like kind of like the new asceticism.
I love this. Tell
Right?
people don't know what asceticism is.
Asceticism is practices that help us to kind of maybe focus in on our relationship with God.
Like asceticism is when you go without temporal goods, like physical temporal
Yeah.
goods, in service of something spiritual.
Right.
So like Thomas More wore like a hair shirt. That was
Right,
an
right,
ascetic.
right.
Now, a lot of it kind of went too far in the history of the church, where it became like self-mortification, too much, self-mutilation. No, none of that.
Be like, saints that are fasting from food. And so for us in this digital age, we may need to fast from the noise. And this is a tough ask given how dependent we have become on our phone. But before you pick up your phone in the morning, engage God in a little conversation. Say a morning prayer. Ask for his assistance in helping you to grow in holiness. And maybe at the end of the day, and do the same thing, same fashion. Put the phone down and spend time recounting your day in the presence of God. Pray the daily examen. Ask for forgiveness where needed. Give God praise for the blessings bestowed, and spend some time in quiet contemplation with the Lord. That's a way better way to fall asleep than watching Netflix, listening to music, or even this podcast. Right?
What are you saying, Dennis?
But I think it's important when we talk about trying to reclaim our attention. I think an important aspect of this is to consider establishing like no digital media times. Like this
Like
is
quiet hours
yeah,
in a dorm.
right?
Yeah.
This is going to be a non-digital media time for our family. Some of those occasions might be when you're having a family meal. I think it should be done when you're driving the car with anyone else in the car. Put the phones
I just thought
away.
that goes without saying. My
It
goodness.
doesn't, yeah. Like, I mean, you know, if you're listening, you know, your family gets in the car, your spouse gets in the car, the phone comes out, you're driving solo. You might as well not have anybody in the car with you because everybody's kind of off doing their own thing. There's no engagement, right? Nobody has your attention. Put the phone away and have a conversation for the love of God. Talk to your kids, talk to your spouse, talk to your friend. Whoever's in the seat next to you or even behind you, if it's your kids, just talk to them. Make the dinner table a no phone zone and a no TV time so that you can give each other the attention that you not only need, but that you're craving and you don't even know it. So take that time, figure out what works best, better yet, what's needed, not just what's convenient when it comes to putting digital media away, and focus your attention towards God and those in your presence.
Because that's the heart of asceticism. It's supposed to be challenging.
Yeah.
So you don't want to pick ascetic practices that will help you kind of cultivate more self-discipline that you think are easily achievable. The point of it is for it to be hard, so that something else can grow. Something else can.
It does. It creates discipline, right? It creates discipline, and it also creates opportunity because, like, for example, fasting. You know, if I'm truly fasting, and I'm not just talking about what we do for Lent, that's not really fasting. You know, I mean, we fast, 2 days out of Lent? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're talking about saints who fast, they're fasting for a series of days, and they're fasting from different things sometimes. And so it does create a discipline, but that hunger, that drive, that addiction that you feel to whatever it is that you're fasting from is a reminder now physically, intellectually, emotionally, whatever it is you're experiencing as you're going through withdrawal. That's an opportunity for you then to turn and allow God to step into that moment, for you to lean into God in that moment. That's the beauty of asceticism.
Yeah, like if I say, oh, I'm gonna fast on fish, well, the problem with that is that I haven't eaten fish in 30 years. So what good is that?
I'm going to fast from chocolate because, I don't like chocolate. It's an easy thing.
Right.
I mean, we give ourselves the easy out when it comes to even our Lenten practices sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's not really much of a sacrifice. There's no asceticism there.
Yeah.
But really, when it comes to this digital media, if you really want to reclaim attention, right, which is being diminished through the digital age, consider some ascetic practices when it comes to the use of digital media. Holiness also means cultivating interiority, the capacity to live from the inside out. And when we talk about this is the ability to be comfortable with silence, to be able to be still so that we can hear God's voice beneath the noise, or perhaps even through the noise. We need to cultivate patience and temperance, especially temperance. We know people who fast as a form of spiritual discipline outside of Lent. Both Christine and I know that. So consider fasting from digital media 1 day a week. And you may have to use it for work, but then when work is over, fast from using it until the next day. Resist the temptation to answer that email or text. Don't even look at it. Put your phone on do not disturb mode and temporarily turn off notifications. If a day is too much of an ask, then consider fasting for the first and the last 30 minutes of your day, or having one tech-free evening a week with your family. Play a game or get outside and introduce your kids to the sun and some grass, right? The world will survive without your response, without your opinion, or without your input for the next 12 to 24 hours. Trust us. The other thing that helps us cultivate interiority is the discipline of single tasking, because multitasking can fracture the mind. It's great that we multitask. I'm a great multitasker. I know you're a great multitasker. So multitasking can, if we're doing all the time, it can leave us a little fractured. Single tasking heals it because we become singularly focused. We do one thing at a time, and when you're praying, you stay focused on prayer.
Yeah, I love just calling this just do one thing at a time, because we live in this world where everything has to have a name and a label and a practice, and everybody has their secret ingredient of the advice that they want to espouse to other people. It's like, have you tried single tasking? Just do one thing.
Just do one
Do
thing.
one thing and try to do it the
Do
best
well.
that you can.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're engaged in a conversation, be present to that individual. Give them your full, undivided attention. I have to remind myself of this at work sometimes because, like, I'm doing stuff in work. I'm trying to get through things, and I have a train of thought, and then maybe somebody pops into the office with a question, right? And I'm listening to them. I want to give them my undivided attention, but I kind of want to finish this too,
Right.
right? And so you're kind of torn, and I hate doing that because not all the time am I certainly don't appear to be giving that person my full undivided attention.
Right. And then they
if
and
I'm
then they
being
feel
honest,
like
I'm
they're not worth the time too.
Right. And
So it does affect how other people feel about themselves when we don't give them the attention that frankly God gives us all the time.
Yep.
God is fixed on us singularly all the time.
Yeah, I need to work on that and being single tasked, and I know everybody else does too. So like I said, even if you're at work, put in an honest day. Quit the surfing, quit the scrolling. Somebody walks into the office, interrupts you, put down what you're doing, give them your undivided attention. Stop watching videos while you're working. You'll be shocked at how your productivity increases. I think the other thing we want to do is we want to ask ourselves, and this is an important question when we're dealing with digital media, ask yourself, is this activity forming or deforming my heart? I'm going to be honest with you. I just did this a couple of weeks ago. I removed all movie apps from my phone. Netflix, gone. Prime Video, gone. Other things, gone. I binge watch the latest series to come out, knocking out maybe 3-4 hours in a sitting and not spend an iota of time praying to God or in conversation with my kids.
I'm impressed that you admit to it. Like,
It was beginning to happen more and more frequently, and I was tired of feeling like horrible about it, like regret afterwards, like, man, what a waste of time.
see, I would be afraid about other people knowing that about me if I had done something like that. That's something I would want. I would be ashamed of it.
Oh.
So I would
I
want to
want
keep
people
it.
to know, like, I really
Right.
want, again, we all struggle with this. I am not perfect.
No, that's a credit to you
Yeah,
to be
I'm
that
not.
transparent.
Yeah, I think we need to kind of admit this, and so I needed to take a drastic. I needed to remove it from my phone. So, like, when I'm sitting there and I find myself with time to do, I'm not jumping onto Netflix. I'm not watching a video. So, like, I might not have access to maybe the TV, or I might have to go into another room. And so, like, I'll just sit there, I'll put the earphones in, and I'll start watching a video. And I'm sitting there, but I'm not being present
Right.
to my family, right? They're not experiencing my presence at all. And so I recognized that the enemy was capitalizing on my lack of discipline to negatively impact my relationship with God and my family, and I needed it to stop. Right? So I had to take measures into my own hands.
And I would encourage people to think about what they take in. And I think that this is worth a larger episode that I want to put together eventually. But what you even take in on the Netflix, what you take in on Prime Video, it's that alone is most likely working against your growing in holiness. It's largely sinful. It's garbage to begin with. I'm not saying everything is worthless.
Name one show that you're probably watching that doesn't involve some type of violence or where somebody isn't killed.
I'm not even talking about that.
Yeah. Well, I know.
I'm
I know
talking-
what
yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. I know what you're talking
Right.
about.
But I think about what's out there. It almost all, especially because there's no regulation in the same way for Netflix and Prime and whatever. They can just put pornographic images on there, and they don't have to feed it through the state, federal regulation machines and all that. So there's other problems within this larger problem. It's not just that I could watch something that's wholesome and I can find it distracting. Most likely I'm watching something that's not good for me.
Right.
And that is
It's shaping me.
right. And then what's
Right.
shaping you? Well, sinful activity is shaping you.
I think, again, another study, and don't quote me on this because it's been a while since I've looked at these numbers, but I think like by the time a child is 3, they have witnessed, I think it was something like 55,000 acts of violence.
Oh, for violence. Oh, wow.
Yeah, 55,000 acts. And then we wonder why the world is the way it is today.
Right.
I mean, if you don't think that that's shaping your child, even the cartoon violence that we see, if you don't think that that's shaping your child, shaping you, I don't know. And I struggle with my kids all the time because I see them watching video after video, scrolling page after page, and most of it is just mind-numbing idiocy. And I realize that I can't change their behavior. I mean, I can talk to them about it, I can point it out, I can tell them this is a waste of time, but they have to recognize it for what it is and how it's affecting them and their relationship with others, including God. But what I can do What I do have the power to do is I can send them some things that are positive, influential, some things that are inspiring. I can text it to them. I can share links to them. I can share accounts that lift my soul in the hope that it may lift their soul too, and perhaps getting them to watch things enough that it begins to change their algorithms. One can only hope, right? But for those of you listening without children, consider muting feeds that stir anxiety, that kind of get you riled up, fill you with envy, or anything else that just kind of puts you in a mood.
I think for people of a certain age too. I mean, a lot of political stuff I know can be very disturbing.
My
I mean,
mother-in-law watches a lot of news feeds,
that's kind of what I mean.
and then she just becomes
hearing it.
anxious about everything. She becomes concerned, and she hears this and she hears that, and then
And the Bible says, don't be anxious about anything. And so, and listen, anxiety is sometimes just a natural response.
Yeah.
If there's really a fire going on, you don't want to ignore the fact that there's a fire going on.
right.
And I mean metaphorically, but you can tune these things out on the feeds. You don't have to take in this stuff and be inundated with it day after day after day.
Yeah, yeah. And I think all of this can be a real struggle for us because many of us suffer from addiction when it comes to digital media. And if you think about it for a second, what's the one thing most of us grab when we find ourselves with a free moment, with nothing to do, when we're bored? It's our phones. Digital detox may be a real challenge for some. And if you're one of those people, name it for what it is. It's an addiction, and bring it to God so that He can heal you and reorder your desires. Take that to prayer. You're not going to be able to battle alone. Like, you go to any AA group, they're all going to tell you, they got to lean into that higher power. You got to lean into something greater than yourself in order to stay sober, right? In order to stay free from addiction.
And I don't think that we think about these digital addictions the way that we think about other kinds of drug addictions or pornography addiction. Yeah. What do drugs do to you? After a while, you cease to be yourself.
Yeah.
Well, this digital world can also be just as toxic. It can rob us of our identity.
Yeah.
And it can rob us of the holiness that we're made for now and also in eternity.
And I would say that it could cause me to rob somebody else of their dignity in how I respond and what I post and what I say and what I do and how I treat them and how I view them. It's just it can be very, very.
Are we ready for some good news? Maybe.
Yeah, let's go. Yes, let's go. Good. Yeah, yeah.
Let's turn the dial.
Thanks for hanging in there, by the way.
So along the lines of what you said about your kids, it's a reminder that your feed is what's forming you. And so if that is true, which it is, consider following accounts that elevate you, that elevate your soul and that feed you in a positive way. And then mute the ones that inflame sin, inflame your vices, that would make that addiction worse. The digital world is one of the biggest mission fields in human history. Right? Because it's not bound by geography.
Yeah.
It encompasses the entire globe. And people online are hungry. They're hungry for meaning. They're hungry for beauty. They want to know what the truth is, and they want to be loved. And we're called to be missionary disciples. We're not called to be influencers. We need to be witnesses, and witnesses who refuse to dehumanize other people, who speak truth with tenderness, who embody peace in a culture that is divisive and prone to panic. Witnesses who show that holiness is not for the cloistered in monasteries or in convents, but for everybody present in the world. I'll tell you, the people who are in the cloister aren't worrying about this,
right?
Because they don't have it to begin with. Right. So let's use digital media to access scripture, for prayer, for podcasts that help you live well in the modern world as a Christian, and engage with things that form our souls and elevate our souls, not just give us a dopamine rush.
And how we conduct ourselves online, I think that's important, because that can really reveal a lot about who we are as a person. And I'm mindful of that all the time in all my communications, whether it's something, whether I'm just sending out an email, whether I'm texting, I'm trying to be genuine to who I am. And with the 501st Legion, the organization that I belong to, with all the Star Wars stuff, I have an administrative role in some of the different groups that I belong to with all of this. And one of the forum for the Pathfinders detachment, that takes care of a certain group of costumes and everything, I kind of work as a Well, I mean, they call it an armorer. It's somebody that just kind of helps them to
I'm sorry,
work.
they call you the armorer?
The role is called an armorer because we help others who are
This is
building
the way.
This is
This
the
is the
way.
way.
We help others that are building their costumes. So we're the ones that are kind of
All right, I'm back on. I got it.
yeah, it's like an advisor, right? An advisory role. A couple years ago, like the detachment leader had kind of announced the staff for the next year term. And he gave me a really great shout out. I mean, I was reading through all the descriptions and he said for the 2025 term, he was introducing the Armory team. And then he mentioned my name. He's a Dennis, enthusiastic, caring, and selfless. Dennis has made a big impression here since joining the detachment in August of 2020. When a new position on the armor team opened up, it was a no-brainer. A lot of people owe their ease of their builds to Dennis, and I'm happy to have him on the team. It was a great shout-out. It just made me feel good, but I also recognize it as an acknowledgement about how I conduct myself on the forum. I am always positive. I'm always encouraging. I am walking with accompanying that. That there's an accompaniment.
And I would say that that's
process to all
authentic. I
those
mean,
things.
you're not just playing this role.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
this is who I am, and I like people. I don't sit there and say, "Hey, I'm a Christian," but like when people find out through conversation or maybe something that maybe I share if I'm posting something within the forums in the discussion, they're sitting back and they're thinking, "Yeah, that tracks." They recognize that. They're not surprised to hear that. And I've met people all over the world. I mean, I have connections with people over in Germany and people over in Scotland and people in other nations and everything that I communicate with on a regular basis. It's a great organization because it's worldwide. And sometimes you hear about some of the tragic things that are going on in their lives. And I'm right there. I'm just like, listen, like, I'll pray for you. My family's going to pray for you. Like, I have a buddy over in Scotland who's dealing with a lot of issues and everything like that, social anxiety and depression and everything. And he's even been dealing with contemplation of suicide on occasion. And now his mom is sick, and his mom is like the last person, who's really fundamental in his life. And he's dealing with all this stuff. And if anything, he's probably agnostic more than maybe an atheist. Not really, no relationship with God whatsoever. But there have been times when we've been kind of talking and everything like that. He says, "Can you do your God thing for me?" Just something simple like that, right? Again, be genuine. You don't have to hide behind a persona, and you don't have to sit there and proselytize either. Just be Christ Jesus.
And wait for the opportunities, because you're an example all the time, whether you realize it or not.
Right. Yeah, you don't realize just how your behavior is being perceived by others.
Because think about if it went a different way. Think about if you were not all the things that this group said about you, and then they were to find, oh, Dennis is a Christian? Oh, I thought he'd be different.
Right.
That's where the problem lies.
Yeah. And this particular detachment that I belong to, everybody is almost, we're all kind of congealed in the same thing. Like, we wouldn't tolerate it. We would call one of us out if somebody on this team was demeaning to anybody online, kind of diminish them because maybe their costume wasn't really up to specs or they did something wrong. We self-police like that. Somebody like that would be out. So there's a whole environment on this particular detachment. That's why I love it so much.
And you're saying all of this goes on the internet.
Yeah.
This is all online
it's all
based.
Online. It's all online. It's all on forums, online and stuff like that. So when you live like that, you end up standing out. You become a light in a very noisy world. And I'm telling you right now, the world does not need more noise. Don't contribute to it. It needs more saints. And as we've said time and time again, to be a saint merely involves using the gifts, the grace, and the talents that God provides you to love him with your whole heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. You do that on a daily basis in a variety of ways, not just preaching the gospel, not just bringing people to the sacraments. That's a part of it, but that's not all there is to it. And there's not a single person listening who isn't capable of doing that. But it does involve a choice, and we're not going to become the saint that God has called and created us to be if we continue to allow ourselves to be influenced and shaped by the digital age in which we live.
Oh, there are also times where I'll be filtering through a comment section, because sometimes, to be honest, the human person can be very funny. I mean, some of the things that people put in these comments are better than some of the best comedians I've ever heard in my life. Yeah. So sometimes I'll go and I'll see, like, what are some good zingers that people have? Good, not cruel things, but just funny things, and it's very entertaining. But then there are other times where it does get very dark, and I will scroll and scroll and scroll until I find one person that has some sense and who spoke some light in the midst of that darkness, right? And I don't know if they're a Christian or what they're about, but it's reassuring to me that
There's hope.
somebody out there
Yeah.
knows right from wrong. So there we have it. So if this episode encouraged you, share it with somebody who might need a little help, and remind them to take inventory, yourself as well, but about the effect that speed and stimulation and self-curation has on us, and the fact that the digital world makes these things much more concerning, and we have to tend to ourselves in the midst of all this in a much more serious and responsible way.
Yeah.
And so think about that. Think about the speed at which things are coming into our lives and how we respond, how that affects us. Think about the overstimulation that we're always taking in, and it makes us overstimulated, right? My algorithm is a little bit more mom oriented, and there's always these funny little bits that I see about how an overstimulated mom reacts. And it's very true. And then the self-curation. We did not make ourselves. We don't tell ourselves who we are. We don't create the world that we want to live in. All of that is just false truth. And we live in a world that's chock full of it. And so to me, that would be the most dangerous, because people say, oh, you be the light in the world that the world needs you to be. Now, you could say that, you could take that in a Christian way, but for the most part, it's not meant to. It's in the spirit of self-empowerment. And it's just, we don't empower ourselves.
Do you know what I just heard on the drive over here today?
What?
Amazon is releasing a new feature where I can go in and ask them to design a podcast. I can select their voices. I can select the content. I can pretty much tell them what I want them to focus on. And yeah, I just heard it on KYW driving over here. On the news radio, just driving over here. So, I mean, I want
part of the appeal of podcasts is that you're listening to other people tell stories, and they're real people.
But isn't this crazy? I mean, this self-curation now. I can create a podcast that I can
create the person on the podcast who's saying the carefully curated things, and they're a carefully curated person.
I know.
Oh, it's wild.
So as soon as I heard it, I thought, I'm going to market this voice. I'm going to send your voice in.
My voice? Oh, yeah, this is what people want to hear. Absolutely.
Right. So again, if this is something that kind of resonated with you, made some connections, you know somebody else who might benefit from it, just share it.
We want to be real people, and we want to live in a real world, and we want to be really holy. And I mean that. If you want to be really holy, then you have to live in the real world. And the real world it may participate in a digital space, in a digital age, but God does not exist like that. And the church does not exist like that. We'll see you next week.
All right, God bless.